Hello, my name is Lee Catherine Goldstein, and I'm the chair of the Jefferson County Historical Commission. The Jefferson County Historical Commission is a county commission made up of volunteers and some staff members. Our mission is to preserve Jefferson County's unique and diverse history, to help preserve Jefferson County's historical sites, and to celebrate the people and places that make our county unique and different. The Jefferson County Historical Commission has 11 regular members, each one of whom is appointed to serve a 3-year term by the Jefferson County Board of County Commissioners. Our current members are Scott Krotzer, Kelly Swansfigger, Stephen Engel, Richard Gardner, Daniel Haas, Carla Opp, Richard Scudder, Bonnie Scudder, Cynthia Shaw, and John Steinley, and myself. The Jefferson County Historical Commission also has emeritus members. Emeritus is an honorary lifetime status that we award to recognize extraordinary dedication of these members to the work of the Historical Commission and our mission. The current emeritus members are Deborah Andrews, Bob Briggs, Nina Kite, Rose Lewis, Mary Lindsay Hepp, Stan Moore, David Nelson, Caitlin Ordway, Millie Roeder, Badette Weir, and Jack Raven, who is deceased. This year, we are delighted to add Rita Peterson to our esteemed group of emeritus members. Rita was born and raised in Jefferson County, and she joined the Jefferson County Historical Commission in 1981. She served as the chair 4 times between 1985 and 2001, and she also held the offices of secretary and treasurer. Rita ran the Writers Award program from 2004 to 2019, and she also chaired our Hall of Fame committee and was responsible for organizing this event from 1998 till 2020. We will miss her on the board, but we are delighted that she will continue to work with us as an emeritus. Thank you, Rita. The Jefferson County Historical Commission is also supported by several staff members who work in the Planning and Zoning Department. We have Brittany Gata, Justin Montgomery, Renee Hansen. All 3 provide wonderful support for us, and we also want to say a special thanks to the Director of Planning and Zoning, Chris O'Keefe, for his continued support of our work and our mission. So I want to talk for a minute about what the Jefferson County Historical Commission has been up to in 2020. And as everyone knows, 2020 has been a very unusual year with the COVID-19 pandemic and the requirement that we all social distance. Ordinarily, we would hold the Hall of Fame event in some beautiful indoor location like the Betcher Mansion, but of course we can't do that this year. So this year, for the first time, we are holding our Hall of Fame virtually, online, but we are recording it in the beautiful, historic Bradford Purley House that you'll see in the pictures in the upcoming presentations. Last month, we presented our 18th Annual Historic Preservation Symposium, which we also held virtually because of COVID. They included presentations about bootleggers, moonshiners, and speakeasies, prohibition in Jefferson County, presented by John Steinley. There was also a presentation by Andrea Keppers on Cement Bill Williams and the building of the Lariat Loop Road, which is also known as Lookout Mountain Road. We also had a presentation by Bonnie Scudder on women's suffrage in Colorado. Now this year, Jefferson County Historical Commission's theme has been Legacy, Businesses, and Trades. And our Historically Jeffco magazine takes up on this theme, offering wonderful articles about our historic businesses and the trades in our area. We have been hard at work working on the Historically Jeffco, and we expect to be able to distribute it in October and November. You can obtain a printed copy at some of our local museums, and you can also read the current copy and access copies of our past editions on the county's website. And now, on to our Hall of Fame. Each year since 1979, we have named 2 individuals who have played a significant role in either Jefferson County's history or the preservation of Jefferson County's history to our Hall of Fame. Portraits and bios of our winners are displayed in the County Commission building. This year, we honor, as our deceased Hall of Fame winner, Catherine Lee Craig. Catherine Craig was born in the 1860s and lived until 1934. She played a very significant role in our state's public education system as Colorado's elected education chief. Please enjoy our next video about her life and significant achievements.
Hello, my name is Sid Platt. I am an historian who focuses on the history of Lookout Mountain and the historic Rockland Church and Cemetery. I have known about Catherine and her brother H.T. Craig for over 20 years. I am here today to explain why we need to honor Catherine Lee Craig and to talk a little bit about her life. Catherine grew up near the historic church that was an important part of her life, and she is buried in the cemetery there. We honor Catherine Craig today for a number of reasons. She was passionate about education. She was an author and a leading member of several women's organizations. Despite all that she accomplished, we mainly should honor her for the work that she did as Colorado Superintendent of Public Instruction from 1904 to 1908. When Colorado became a territory, the territorial government created a rudimentary school system. When Colorado became a state, a much more reasonable system was codified into law. Unfortunately, over the years, changes were made to the laws, but they were not recorded as changes in the basic laws themselves. The Superintendent of Public Instruction would publish a nice leather-bound book that contained changes to the laws on alternate years. The contents of these books were not used to modify the laws, however. If one wanted to find out about a specific issue, one had to go to the laws themselves. Helen Grenfell preceded Catherine Craig as Superintendent of Public Instruction. By all accounts, Helen was a very competent superintendent. Helen was concerned with the difficulty in interpreting the laws. She put together a book that contained all the issues that she could find in her 6 years as Superintendent of Public Instruction. Catherine agreed with Helen that the laws needed redoing, although Helen Grenfell felt that a complete revision of the laws was impractical. That is exactly what Catherine did. It was a major task to dig through all the material and straighten the laws out. She was helped, no doubt, from the exceptionally fine work that Helen did in describing all the individual problems to be resolved. But it was Catherine who did the extremely hard work of correcting everything. Catherine completed the task of completely revising and thoroughly annotating the laws in 1904 when she created the annotated school laws of the state of Colorado as amended to date September 1, 1905. Catherine created a table of contents for the laws and an extensive index. She reviewed each of Helen's issues as well as others that she found, and she made corrections so that the laws were easily readable. Catherine ran again in 1908 when her term ended, but she lost the election. She was looking for something to do, so she became the field secretary of Colorado Women's College. This college had not accepted students until 1904, so Catherine was the first leader of that school. The school had been founded in 1888 with the idea that it would be the Vassar of the West. Catherine was born in Waverly, Missouri, and she came to Colorado with her family in 1870 when she was 8 years old. There were no schools in the area, although the area had been designated by the Territorial Commission as District 13. The community built a small country school in 1874 when Catherine was 12. She attended that school to obtain her elementary education. When Catherine was 22, she attended the University of Colorado as a member of the preparation department in 1894. That department was intended to prepare students for a college degree, but the school also allowed people to take special classes that would prepare them to take the teaching certificate test. Catherine probably obtained her certificate in 1894 or 1895 and began her teaching career by teaching in the little country school that she grew up in. She later went on to teach in several Denver schools as well as in the Salt Lake school system until 1904 when she became the superintendent of public instruction. We can obtain further understanding of Catherine's life if you realize that she was born just as the Civil War was starting and she died just before World War II. She saw a dramatic change in women's fashions during her life. When she was born, women were wearing corsets and big skirts that reached to the ground. As the years progressed, skirts became shorter and easier to live with. This picture shows Strode and Gwendolyn Ralston in 1928. Strode was the person who created Catherine's exceptionally large gravestone. Notice that his wife Gwendolyn has a space between her skirt and her boots. This would have appalled Catherine. Catherine was present at a meeting of several Denver leaders when they began to discuss the length of skirts. Catherine felt that the skirt and the stocking should just meet when a woman stepped onto a streetcar. By the late 1920s, however, skirts were creeping upwards. This photograph shows two young women enjoying the day without the constraints of earlier fashions. Catherine would have felt that this behavior was inappropriate. Catherine was on the board of the University of Northern Colorado 3 different times, so she had considerable interest in the school. This interest could have been because that school was the premier normal school for education. Catherine had a long career as a teacher, author, woman's advocate, and most importantly, as the superintendent of public instruction. She died on April 1st of 1934, and she's buried in the historic Rockland Cemetery near where she grew up. She was popular with many people, including leaders of the state. As a result, she lay in state in the state capitol just before she was buried. Catherine was buried with a huge stone as her gravestone. So we honor Catherine today for the fact that she documented the modern school system, but also for her work as an author and her support of women's issues.
The Jefferson County Historical Commission is pleased to provide our second Hall of Fame award to Linda Kirkpatrick. Linda has been an extraordinary volunteer in the Evergreen community. We are proud to honor her with the Hall of Fame award. We are recognizing her for her energy and enthusiasm around organizing and funding volunteer community groups and for her efforts to preserve our spectacular Western landscape. So Linda, tell us, what brought you to Evergreen?
You know, I didn't have a whole lot to say about it. I married my husband in 1981 and he brought me there, and it was a wonderful experience. And I owe so much to him for encouraging me to be involved.
Speaking of which, what has motivated you to volunteer in the community?
You know, I had a soft spot in my heart for volunteer ambulance workers. And there was an article in the paper that made me aware of the need for volunteers. And I called and I said, I'd be glad to volunteer, but as it turned out, they couldn't accept anybody who wasn't medically trained as an EMT or paramedic. So they allowed me to attend meetings, and I had explained that I had some fundraising background. So I proposed that they come up with a building for themselves to house the ambulances and to allow the volunteers to have a place to stay in snowstorms so they could be readily available. And I ended up coordinating that project in 1983 and for 2 years. And it involved acquiring land and taking it through the rezoning process and raising $150,000 from
Wow.
the community in 2 years. And then we did a barn raising, an old-fashioned barn raising, and that was pretty exciting. The community really got behind it, and although I only knew 5 people when I started out, 5 people in the community, 3 of them lived in the same house with me. By the end of 2 years, I felt like I was pretty well acquainted in the community.
Wonderful. So it appears that you were involved in a number of land preservation efforts. How did that come about?
Well, somebody I met during the ambulance campaign was approached to chair an effort to save Noble Meadow, which was a real gem of the community, open space land that was slated for development. It was 408 acres, and they planned 238 homes on that. And he approached me and said, "Would you co-chair this with me?" And I did. And that started me with being interested in preserving open space. It was quite an effort. It was the first project for the Mountain Area Land Trust that had formed in the early 90s. And they'd been very quiet about things and didn't want publicity until they had their first project. And this was it, and it was really a very ambitious first project for any land trust. So it was 408 acres, and it involved convincing Evergreen Parks and Rec to buy their first ever parcel of land. And on that, they put the Buchanan Rec Center and built ball fields. And it required going through the first successful bond issue after the Tabor Amendment was put into effect in the 90s. And we voted as a community to tax ourselves and had a 96% approval rate, if you can believe that.
That's impressive.
It is. The community really got behind it. But it also involved convincing Jefferson County Open Space to pay more for land that they had already refused to buy several months earlier. But it was an important part of it, and we had only 5 months to accomplish this.
Oh my gosh.
It also involved collecting $200,000 from the community. And that was what made the difference with Jefferson County Open Space. When the community would put money into it themselves, the Open Space Commission would back it too. So we had 5 months to raise $2.3 million, which was quite a feat.
Wow.
We actually did it in 4.5 months, and we refunded some money to people who donated after we reached our goal, and we're to this day the only organization that ever turned down a grant from a well-known Colorado foundation who offered to put us over the top. So it was a wonderful experience of community spirit and getting behind things.
It sounds fabulous.
The publicity and associations that were built with that success story led to another opportunity for preserving some parkland, and that was in Bergen Park. There was 11 acres that were slated for commercial development, and I was approached to see if we could turn that into a park and keep it from being built up with commercial buildings. And so we formed a nonprofit group called the Evergreen Land Community Coalition, and its sole purpose at the time was to protect the land in this one particular area. But somebody in that group had this wonderful vision. He could look down at a map and see that there were only 6 property owners, and if we could convince all of them to sell the land to the community, that we could have a 66-acre park. And I thought that was something that the community could get behind better than just the 11 acres. So I encouraged the group to go for the big project. And it was a small group of committed volunteers that really put a lot of effort into surveying the community and involving them in many ways. And we had to raise $125,000 in 6 months. And maybe that doesn't sound like a bunch right now, but then it was a lot more. And we conducted the first master planning for that property. We didn't acquire it all at once, but in steps. And before the organization dissolved, there was another opportunity. There was 17 acres of land, again slated for commercial development, and in a neighborhood, along the highway, but in a neighborhood. And people thought that might make a really good neighborhood park, and it certainly has. It's become actually the most popular park for Evergreen Parks and Rec. It's called Stagecoach Park.
Oh, lovely. Definitely heard of it.
That,
Well, it also appears that you have had two significant publications in the Evergreen area that strongly influence volunteerism. Can you tell us a little bit about Upbeat and your website, justaroundhere.com?
I'd love to. Upbeat was a monthly print publication that was mailed directly to 12,500 homes. And it was really designed to encourage people to get involved in the community. I had such a strong belief about getting involved, and I thought it was a wonderful community, a welcoming community. It was a time when it was growing from, in 1970, there were only 2,700 year-round residents in
Wow.
Evergreen, and it was adding about 10,000 people each decade. So by the turn of the century, it was about 40,000 people in that zip code. Because it's unincorporated, there are no city boundaries and no local government. So whenever there was a need, people just got together to meet that need. And as a result, we had something like 140 nonprofit groups
Wow.
that did things for the community. And so this publication was dedicated to volunteerism and encouraging people to get involved. And then Just Around Here was a similar thing in that it really promoted getting involved, civic engagement and civility. It profiled, it was a weekly publication online, but it profiled a different person or a couple of people each week who had made significant contributions to the community, who were volunteers and good role examples. So over the years, I publicized 500 individuals with profiles about them.
Excellent. What motivated you to co-found Leadership Evergreen?
Well, although I was one of those people who just stepped forward without being asked, didn't have much leadership experience at the time, but the community welcomed me, and I realized that not everybody feels comfortable stepping forward, and leadership really needs to be stimulated and nurtured. And so another fellow and I had attended the 50 for Colorado Leadership Program, and it's a statewide program. And when I graduated from my class, I approached him and said, gee, this would be good for Evergreen. And so in about 1995, we started the first class of 15, and it was designed to take emerging and existing leaders and encourage them to take leadership roles in the community. And ever since then, they've been having a biannual class of 15 students or so.
That is wonderful. Well, and speaking of future generations and classes, what would you say to future generations about why they should volunteer in their community?
Well, I would say get involved. It's a great way to meet people and feel like you're doing something for your community. And I feel that there's so many opportunities for one person to affect change and make a difference. I just feel strongly about that.
Well, we are delighted with to have you here and to give you the Hall of Fame Award. You've certainly earned it, and the volunteerism that you have experienced and encouraged in other people is just really remarkable. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very honored. Thank you.
At the foot of Red Rocks Park lies an early cattle ranch, the Lazy J, which is a remaining piece of history from the early ranching days of Jefferson County. The property reflects the culture of the early ranches in Golden. The ranch itself was settled in 1865 by the Derby boys, one of whom, William Derby, later married Alice Rooney, the daughter of the Rooney ranching family. The Rooney Ranch sits on the other side of the Dinosaur Ridge hogback, and it was one time the largest cattle ranch in Jeffco, stretching 4,480 acres. The two ranches often worked together, trading skills and tools. The cut in the road over the hogback was once a cow path between the two ranches. Cattle would be driven over the hogback and then down through the Lazy J to the train in Morrison.
Hello, my name's Richard Scudder. I'm the chair of the Landmark and Preservation Committee for the Jefferson County Historical Commission. Each year the Commission gives landmark status to places and structures in Jefferson County which help preserve the historic nature of Jefferson County. Each year you can look at the new ones that have come online, and they're on the jeffco.us website, where you can look at all of the dozens of structures and places which have been awarded designated status in past years. This year it's my pleasure to give the historic status to the Lazy J Ranch. The Lazy J Ranch is a historic ranch running cattle back into the 1800s here in Jefferson County. The bunkhouse and the barn are both historic structures. The bunkhouse itself was built somewhere in the 1880s, and the barn in 1895, and we're happy to recognize them this year for historic landmark status. So it's my honor to give the plaque for historic designation, which can be mounted on the side of the building, to Ron Moreland, who's the owner of the Lazy J Ranch. Ron, congratulations.
Thank you. It's something I made a kind of a silent vow to Alice Rooney's memory that I would do everything I could to rebuild and protect this ranch, so this is very important to me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
The barn on the Lazy J property appears to be built in the same style and materials as the Rooney Ranch. It was built by the Derby brothers in 1895, likely with the Rooneys helping with its construction. In the early 1900s, the barn cracked and was never completely repaired, even though Alice Rooney Derby complained about it. The crack can be seen on the inside of the building and has been stabilized by the current owner, Ron Moreland. The bunkhouse is very rustic in style and was built earlier, circa 1880. The interior has been converted into a cabin. As a boy, Moreland said that he had seen the ranch when on an outing to Red Rocks Amphitheater. He told his mother that one day he would own it, and while it took many decades, his boyhood dream finally came true. After the purchase, he worked on the barn, taking care to preserve its historic character, and then did the same for the bunkhouse.
Since 2010, the Jefferson County Historical Commission has given the Meyer Award to individuals and organizations in recognition of special contributions to the preservation of the history and historic artifacts of Jefferson County. The Meyer Award is named after Norm and Ethel Meyer, who worked tirelessly to preserve structures from Jefferson County's ranching history. And the evidence of their efforts can be seen on Jefferson County Open Space Meyer Ranch Park. This year, we are very excited to provide the Meyer Award to the Ken Carroll Ranch Historical Society for its dedication to preserving and promoting the history of the Ken Carroll Ranch. Their work has resulted in getting 5 historical sites listed on the National Register of Historic Places. This includes archaeological sites, stone structures used by Paleo Indians who migrated through and lived in our area between 5,700 and 1,300 years ago. We are celebrating the work of the Ken Carroll Ranch Historical Society also in creating and distributing historical materials about the ranch and its artifacts. So, thank you very much for your work in preserving the history of Jefferson County and the Ken Carroll Ranch area. We are pleased to give you the Meyer Award.
Well, thank you, Lee Catherine. And thanks go to the Jefferson County Historical Commission and to Norm and Ethel Meyer, who instituted this award for the preservation work in Jefferson County. It's very much appreciated. It's appropriate, I think, that we are here in the Bradford Purley House on Ken Carroll Ranch. And maybe I don't want to say the pandemic was a good thing, but because of the pandemic, we couldn't have the Hall of Fame ceremony there at some other interior location. Bradford Purley House is very historic here. It's one of those listed on the National Register of Historic Places. That occurred in 2015 and 1997. It was on the Colorado Register of Historic Properties, and it was the work of predecessors from our history committee that did the preservation work, which was completed in 2005. Near here, walking distance, probably only a couple hundred, maybe a little bit more yards, are two of those National Register archaeological sites, Bradford Site 2 and Bradford Site 3. So we know that prehistoric people lived here as long as 5,000, somewhat more than that, years ago. And so this was really an important archaeological location, an important place for ancient peoples to live. Only a mile or so south of here is the newest entry into the National Register, the John C. Schaefer Barn, which in July 2019 was determined to be in the National Register. And John Schaefer bought the ranch in 1914. And he decided, he was a Chicago businessman, he decided to want to get into the cattle business as well, and eventually to raise show cattle to appear in livestock shows throughout the country. And so that barn was built for that purpose, and it was completed, I think started in 1921 and completed in 1922, and its significance is largely architectural in terms of what the National Register people said. So I'd really like to give kudos to our committee. You can't see them on the camera, but many of them are here, and they're the ones who do the work. And it's an amazing thing that this group does. Not far from here is the Bradford Apple Orchard, and preserving the apple trees that were planted by Bradford in the 1860s. If my math is right, that's about 160 years ago. And so we have people who are involved with that. We have, I see Marilyn Norris here. She is the one who presented the idea of doing oral history. So we have an oral history project. I see Jack Warner over here. He's our archaeology guy. And he's the one that coordinates all that work. And recently, in fact, this week, there was an archaeological dig associated with the finding from a year ago, and there was an investigation into how significant that finding is. And I see others in the oral history project here. I see our photographer, Pat Bottolato, here, and she's involved with the archives, keeping the records. I see Vinny, who's the vice chair of our committee, and he's involved with a project now of getting GPS coordinates and photos of all our historic sites on the ranch. I see members of our Bradford Purley House Garden Committee, and if this were flower garden season, we'd see flowers planted around, and that's a really valuable part of what we do here as well. I see Stephanie there, and she coordinates the tours and coordinates the articles that are in our newspaper, our community newspaper. I see my wife Mary, who is not only a supporter of mine, but she is the one who coordinates our what we call our iMovie project, creating videos for the community about the history of the ranch. The one that's coming out soon, it has to do with the development era from 1971 to the present day. And I see others on the garden committee here and on the historic site project. So it's a work of many people that has resulted in the all the work that's done. These are very committed, dedicated people. We have the support of the administration of our community. I see Scotty Martin here, who's president of the Homeowners Association Board, the MA Association Board, and he's a liaison to our committee. And also he rolls up his sleeves and does some work with us. He was a part of the archaeological dig just a couple of days ago. And our executive director is very supportive, as well as the ranger staff who are out on the 10,000 acres that is Ken Carroll Ranch. And they're the ones that can see if things are going on with historic sites, and they tell us about it. They're the ones who help us install the interpretive signs that are around.
Excellent.
So it's, I don't know who said this first, but it takes a village. It takes lots of folks to make something happen, and this committee has that, and so we're really appreciative. Thank you so much.
We
for
appreciate
the
all that
award.
you've done to preserve the history of this amazing area. Thank you.
The Jefferson County Historical Commission would like to thank you for joining us in our virtual celebration of the people and places that help promote and preserve our special history and heritage in Jeffco. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you with ideas about future programs, or story ideas, or nominations of someone you know who has contributed to the history or preservation of the history of Jefferson County. Thank you very much.